So welcome everyone. My name is Kara Feeney and I am the Director of Exhibitions here at the Evanston Art Center. Again, we're all excited to have you all with us here today. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. Just make sure that you are on mute throughout the program while ourselves and Michael are speaking. You can find mute. For me, it's on the bottom of the toolbar there. And then at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A where you can put in questions into the chat function. That's also on the bottom of the toolbar there as well. We'll ask Michael any questions that you all have. Another quick note, we are recording this and we will post it on our website and YouTube page after the program as well. So now I'd like to introduce to you Paula Danoff, who will then introduce Michael.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. Michael K. Paxton needs no introduction, but he is a sixth-generation West Virginian and Chicago-based artist. Paxton has been an adjunct faculty member of Columbia College Chicago since 2005. He has a BA in art from Marshall University and an MFA in drawing and painting from the University of Georgia. His awards include a grant from the Adolph and Esther Gottlieb Foundation in New York, an Illinois Arts Council Fellowship in Visual Arts Award, and 2 professional development grants. He has been selected for major solo shows, including Raw Reckoning at the Ukrainian Institute of Modern Art and Pillars of Dust at the Heuser Art Center at Bradley University. The documentary film, Work at Hand, Michael K. Paxton, has been recently featured in screenings around the country and was the official selection of the 17th annual Great Lake International Film Festival. It's with great honor and pleasure that we welcome Michael to his exhibition here at the Art Center, as well as to our program today. Thank you so much.
All right. So I'm going to start sharing, I guess. Let's go to advanced. Let's go here. Hi, everybody. Can you see me? All right. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for showing up. That's awful nice of you. And I kind of want to start with a bunch of thank yous. Well, the first thank you's got to go to the fellow artist and my wife, Jean Nemchek, for coming up now 40 years this summer. And because without her, I wouldn't be here, or none of this would be happening. And that is for sure. Next, I want to thank Paula Danoff, who is the Executive Director and CEO of the Evanston Art Center. I called her up one day and said, I'd like to come up there and show you what I've been doing. I'd like to get a show up there. So her, and that's the first time I met Kara too, Feeney, who is the Director of Exhibitions. And they looked over and they, and a couple of days later, I get a call from the exhibition review committee, which was Harold Bauer and Jane Carney. And they showed up down here to the southwest side where my studio is. And they saw what I was doing and they were very nice to me. And then a few days later, I get a call saying, how would you like to have a show in October 2020? And I thought, well, that worked out really well because I already had a couple shows lined up for 18th and 9th, 2018 and 2019. So I was going to put me three big shows in a row in 3 years. Of course, with this pandemic coming, everything got kind of pushed forward in the calendar because other people had, after March, everything got thrown up in the air. And so now here at March, here I am with the show. Speaking of Kara, she has been, I'd like to point out that she's the exhibition director, and she has been so buttoned up and so professional and always answering my call and my emails and getting all the publicity and the brochure and the card and getting this show put up. And with her and me and my assistant, Lily Cozen, we showed up at 9 o'clock and we're laughing at 3 and had the whole thing in the air. And then I came there on Thursday, and Carrie like lit it really nice, and there it sits. I also want to thank Columbia College Chicago. I'm working on my 17th year there teaching, and they gave me a professional development grant that's covering all my costs for this show. This is my 6th one from them. So they've been very supportive of my work, and it actually has helped me immensely with traveling and packing and shipping and all that type of thing. So that's great. And then, you know, at the end, just the Evanston Arts Center, they're supported by the Illinois Art Council and also their membership fund. So, you know, everybody, I'd like to think I did it all by myself, but shows like this, there's a lot of people that open up doors and hold it for me as I waltz through. So let's get started about what the name of the show is. Interpolations, and I came about that from some reason that when I starting to work on this new work, and I don't know, I'm not one with a big vocabulary, so I thought I thought I was going to be interpreting things, but when I looked it up and I got the dictionary out, it said that to insert something between 2 fixed points, to alter by insertion of new material, insert into a series by estimating or calculating some from surrounding known values. So what had happened is that for the last 30 years, I have had at the foundation of my work the fact that I am a 6th generation West Virginia from southern West Virginia in the coal fields. My family is coal mines and railroads all through there, and my concern and for the plight and my anger and for what has happened to the culture and my family, the people, the mountains themselves, has fueled my work for 30 years. And my last show was all about using slide sections of black lung as the structures on which to build my painting. And after I got through with that show, with the Ukrainian Institute of Modern Art, I thought, well, you know what? 30 years, I've done paid my dues. I think West Virginia, I've said what I could say about it, and I needed to do something else. So when I started looking around for something else to paint, you know, because I had this show coming up, and I wanted to do new work, I didn't know where to go. So first I started out with a couple of really bad efforts and got mad, and they're rolled up there, stored somewhere, like you always do when you first start something. And then I thought, well, let me look for some reason, the idea of an ultrasound. I thought, well, let me see what ultrasounds look like. And I went on the Google and there they were, just these crazy, interesting structures and shapes and things. And so I just started making sketches of them and then that's when that interpolate hit me for some reason. I don't know if I'd heard it somewhere or somewhere it had soaked into this old head of mine, and I thought, well, that's because I didn't really care what they were ultrasounds of. I don't care if it was looking for disease or this or that or whatever, but these sonograms are so varied and so wild, and they look like landscape. They look like they're all over the place. They look, and so I just started sketching because everything I do starts from the sketchbook. And so when I got the definition out there, I thought, well, that gave me permission. I felt like the idea of the structure to build a painting on was the important thing, and the idea that somehow I was given permission by calling it interpolate, that I could do whatever I wanted to it. So that's what I did. So let me stop sharing this picture and let me show you some pictures of the show first, and then I'll come back. So you'll have to forgive me as I bounce around trying to do these different things. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna share again. I'm going to go back to basic, and then I'm going to share y'all again. All right. So here's, when you first walk into the Evanston Arts Center, that's what you'd see. These are, it's made up of 8-foot by 6-foot chalk, charcoal, gesso, acrylic on raw canvas on the walls. Those are 8-foot by 6-foot, and there's 8 of those. There's 5 charcoal on paper drawings that are 6-foot by 50 inches. And there's 2 smaller drawings that are 50 inches by 36 inches. So I've got them layered in here. So let's see if this all works like I thought it would. So there's what the drawings look like. So as you walk in there, you would see these drawings here. Those are 6-foot tall, charcoal on paper. You know, this marks, this fall I'll be 50 years when I started as a freshman in school, and they gave me some fine charcoal and a kneaded eraser and a compressed piece of charcoal, and I've been doing that ever since. And so that's what happens with 50 years of experience of making drawings. So and then here are where Kara and Paula were standing. This is kind of the wall here. You'll see some other things peeking out because all these pictures aren't all the same size, but these are, and they're all numbered. So this would be number 11 and that's number 6. So I numbered them, both the drawings and the paintings. Interpolate 1 through 11, interpolate big drawing 1 through 5, interpolate small drawing 1 and 2. So that's how I always do that. So if you go through the show, you can kind of see, you know, because in any kind of series like that, you kind of do a lot of paint, a little less paint, this shape, that shape, all that kind of thing. So, and if we come through here, now if you look around, you can see these are more of the big drawings, and that's a little small drawing there. And I think I've got a little wider shot there too. Yeah, so you can see number 8 back here. So in other words, you walk in, you see here, I'm kind of doing this for people who are out of town. And then it's a big area here, and then there's a big long hallway, which is, it's kind of like a large L, the shape of the gallery here. So then this is looking back as you're walking down the hallway. So you can see they have these huge, nice windows here off Central Avenue there in Evanston. And so it gets a lot of interesting light, and there's lots of different interesting angles to the space. At first, you know, the more I look at it, the more I took photographs of it, I start seeing how things relate in space with each other. This one is, this is number 9, and then there's a drawing on the other side here. I don't know if everybody can see this. I got my bar in the way here, but that's all right. There it is, goes up the top, but I don't need it there. I want it someplace else. All right, so let me pull this down. Hold on, I just screwed things up. Let me go here. Oh boy, all right. These bars are something else. Let me see if I can move it down here. That's way, there we go. That's what I need to do. All right, boom here. This is looking back down the hallway the other way. This is number 3 looking that way. And now we get to the drawings. This is what I've given you a sketchbook pictures here. So this would be the first things I did with the charcoal drawings. So that would have been somewhere around this time last year when I started thinking about these shapes. So everything I do is off of a sketchbook, and you'll also see how I've marked it to match the size of the paper. Everything is kind of the way I go. Let me stop here for a second and stop sharing for a minute. And let's share again. And let's go back to basic so you can see my pretty face. You know, everything I've ever done is through sketchbooks. And what happens, I use pen and ink, and I just fill up sketchbooks after sketchbook after sketchbook. I have probably six, this past year, I probably got 6 or 7 sketchbooks, from little small moleskins, you know, to like bigger moleskins to another bigger book. And I just fill them up with the drawings. And then I go through and I figure, well, that's a shape I haven't used yet, and I'll figure out if it can fit into the format. And generally I'm using, the 8x6 format, and the paper is a little longer at the 7x50, but you get the idea. And so that's one of the drawings I did. And this is the other one. That's the big one. So this is what I do is I take the sketch of the drawing, of the image I find wherever I found the sonogram. I make a sketch of it. Then I never look at that sonogram again. Then I take this sketch and then I use this to make the drawing or the painting from. So that way I've removed myself a couple of steps from the source, so that all I'm dealing with is kind of the structure and my rendering of it at the moment. And sometimes they're better renderings and sometimes they're not so better renderings. But this is, and you can see where my hand, all this charcoal, my dirty hands holding this thing, because I would sit there and hold it to the size of the thing, and then I get back there and I find out where that line is, and I go up there and I make that line, and that's how I blow them up. I don't use any projections at all. I do it all manually, because that way it also, then I can interpolate even further and add what I'm doing to it. So so if you look at these, there's that drawing from that sketch. I didn't show that sketch, but that's one of the drawings. And this is an interesting point too, I think, that I found over my checkered career as being an artist, is all the work that I think was the big mistake, or the weakest work, or the thing that's, I don't know if I should put that in or not. Those are the ones that everybody gravitates to. So I think that over my career, 40 years now in Chicago, as of Tuesday, my first show in Chicago. I think that the older I get, the less I know what I'm doing. And I think that's the important part. It's taken a long time. I've always, I tried to push to a place where I don't know what I'm doing so much, and I'm not so sure it's working. Because I think at a certain point, if I started just finding out what I know how to do and just kept polishing it and polishing it, I think I'm standing still. And I think that making art and being an artist is too important and too sacred of a thing to do to just kind of settle for something that's pretty. I want to try to push and try to find a better way for me to see, and hopefully maybe have other people open up their eyes to see something that they hadn't seen before. That's always the hope. And the rest of the time, it's just anxiety and fear. So here's another drawing. And so they all had used the paper. I used the same size paper, the 72 inches by 50. But, they're gotten richer. All right, now we go to the sketchbooks for the paintings. Now, once I got all those big drawings done, and a couple of them didn't make it, I've got a couple of them laying in there that rolled up that I overworked, or I got to, they just didn't make it didn't make it. And so these are two sketchbooks of many. And so those would be the two that you saw that standing behind Kara there. That's that one on her left, and this one's on the right. And then the next one would be these here. This would be number 8, and this is number 9, which I showed before. So if we go here, I've got the more finished, professional shot photos of the paintings, and I'll just dial through them really quickly here. So this is number 11. This is the last one I did. I think I use this for all the publicity and the cards and everything like that. And they use the detail down here, this detail down in here for this, because, about the end of it, I start figuring out what I'm doing. But, at first I didn't want to do this because it had that big black shape in there, and then it works. Who knows, if I ever figure out this business, I'm going to get out of it. Here's the other one that's on the other wall. I think you can see the paintings a little bit better this way. And you can see that there's a lot of chalk still. And let me tell you about my process here while we're looking at the paint. What I do, and the reason I've been doing this since probably 1998, I've been working on this raw canvas. And what happens when I first moved up here from Athens, Georgia back in '83, I got a job. I told everybody I knew how to do set design and backdrop painting and everything like that for still photographers and movies and stuff. And I'd lied about it, and they gave me the job, and I'd learned how to do it real quick. I figured I'd gone to school. I'd been to graduate school. I should be able to read a book and figure something out. And so they wanted to have those backdrops that are those model backdrops where they can fold them and drape them and stuff like that. And somewhere I had read if you took the sizing out of the canvas, then it became limp, and you could, if you didn't put the paint on there too thick, you could do that type of thing to it. So that's what I did. I used to make these big backdrops that were, 20, 30 feet long and on the floor and coated them. So what I learned how to do was to take a little bit of dish soap, about that much, in a sawed-off gallon milk bucket, and then I would staple the canvas up here behind me, and I coat it down the raw canvas, and it would pull so tight, and the staples were coming out of it, and I'd have to keep pulling it up. And once it dried, it would be limp as can be. I'd re-stretch it, and then I could take this chalk and charcoal, and I could draw all this. There's all this chalk in here that's all in here. And what I do is I take 2 buckets of clean water, and I just go up there, and once I got the thing drawn in as best I could, I coat it with water, and it drips, and it does this, and it gets all messy, and it gets dark, and then I come back after it's dried, and all that's left are the marks of the chalk and the charcoal and stuff. And it hasn't soaked through it, and it's not on top of it, but it's embedded into the threads of the canvas, and it's there for good. So that was a way for me to make big drawings on something that was more durable than a big piece of paper, because big pieces of paper like that are hard to deal with, because they want to tear, you have to store things. So these are kind of like just big drawings in color. But I use, once I get that going, then I use acrylic paint and really washy. If you look at all this texture and stuff in there, if you run your hand across that, it's as flat as a piece of canvas. There's actually, it's all visual texture, because it's all built on lots of layers of little small marks, and building it up to get that color. Because once it's in that raw canvas, then it's that. All right, it looks like I'm running out of time. So let me just show the pictures here. My goodness, that went fast. And let me get back, stop sharing here. And let me go back to share again. And we go to advanced. Whoops, wrong thing. Hold on, stop sharing. Let's go to share canvas. Let's go to advanced. Let's go to camera. Let's go to share. That's all I had to say. It's a half hour through there, but I'd like to mention a couple of things here before we start getting into questions or whatever we're doing and stuff. I hope this is interesting, and I just haven't just been talking your ear off. But when I first come out of graduate school down there in Georgia, I went to the CAA convention looking for a teaching job, like everybody else, with the MFA burning a hole in their pocket. And there I met Barbara Latham. I interviewed for the Art Institute of School of the Art Institute of Chicago to teach there. And Barbara Latham started the Time Arts section there and developed the video data bank. And she looked at me and she said, well, you're just out of graduate school. Well, I got people wanting that have got 10, 15 years experience, but I think you got interesting work. And I think I can get you some stuff in Chicago. And I thought, well, that's all right. And so I got back home and I thought, well, I'll just write all these galleries in New York and Chicago, tell them I'm out here and I got good paintings and I want to show them. And I got a thing back from the Artist Project in New York saying they liked my work. And then the late Nancy Laurie sent me a letter saying, you know, next time you're in Chicago, come see me. So I went down to the bank and I pulled out every dime I had and I bought a plane ticket and I wrapped every drawing and painting I could carry on my back. And I told her I'd be there tomorrow. And so I called up Barbara Latham. She gave me her number. I said, I'm going to come down there tomorrow and you set that thing up for me that you was talking about. So I show up just about as country as you can get. And Nancy Laurie, who had a wonderful gallery on LaSalle Street, she's passed away, but she was a real force in Chicago. She saw my work and she thought, oh my goodness, this is crazy. She says, who else you see? I'm seeing the Name Gallery. And she sat there and called up Name Gallery and told him to make sure I was there, going to come down there. You know, Barbara Latham's gone, Nancy Laurie's gone. I want to remember them because they really opened up the door for me. And then I got down there to the Name Gallery and one person who's still alive and still painting, and he's even got a painting show up now at Bradley. Paul Kranick was the director. And he wouldn't know what to make of me, but he called up the late Michael Brocky and had him come over. And that was over on 9 West Hubbard Street. And sure enough, that was in the fall of 1980. And by March of 81, I had a one-man show. And Barbara had me come over to Art Institute, and they gave me a visiting artist at the same time. And so some old boy from Southern West Virginia had a couple of people open up doors for him. And I could go back throughout my life and teachers who gave you a chance. And I miss them. So as a teacher myself, I started teaching at Columbia College when I was 52. I'd already had a career. I had, you know, lots of collections and I was doing quite well. But Miss Kilgore, who'd saved my life down there at Marshall, had passed away suddenly, and I felt like I needed to pay her back. And so for the last 17 years, I've been paying her back. And all that time, I've also had a lot of shows and been painting. And I think that for my students, if any of them are attending, which I hope, maybe not, they're probably sick of hearing me talk this week. This has been an interesting life so far, and I hope it keeps on going. And what happens is that you start meeting people through these shows like Kara and Paula and all these other people I mentioned. And those influences actually feed what you're trying to do. And I think the important thing for most artists is trying to conquer doubt. You know, you're putting yourself out there all the time, and you're trying to make something that's honest and authentic and means something to you. I think you try for a long time in your life to find your voice. And once you found your voice, then you better start talking about something important with it. And that's what I've tried to do. Now, this show has been very interesting for me, because what I've tried to do this time was to put West Virginia away and somehow just think about the structure and the paint. And I was interested. I look at a lot of art people. That's about all I look at. And there's a lot of Per Kirkeby. I don't say his name correctly, but he just died last year. He was a Danish painter. Beautiful, big, colorful, abstract paintings that have something to do with nature. And that gave me kind of permission to try to, I wanted to have more color, I wanted to have more structure, and I wanted to have more depth or space in the work. And that's what this interpolation has been for me. It's taken me a while to get used to it in the space. And like everything else, I think, you put a show up and you think, oh my God, what have I done? And you go home and you feel like, oh my God, what a mess. And you come back the next day and they're lighting it and it says, okay, it's looking a little better. And then by Sunday, I was proud of it. So that seems to be par for the course for me. I think when I'm working for anybody, I think if I really think I'm doing something good, I'm in trouble. And if I think I've really screwed something up, then I'm probably doing okay. I'm reminded by that there's an old saying that John Cage said about, he said that when you start in the studio, you start with everybody that you've ever talked to or you've ever read about painting. And as you start working one by one, they start leaving the room. And if you're lucky, it's just you and the painting. And if you're real lucky, you leave the room. And I think there's a couple of times in this show that maybe I got close to leaving the room on. And I think that as I get older, I think I have stripped down my materials to like just the bare minimum. And I also think that the size is important to me. I think of these paintings as more of places than things. When I make smaller work, it seems like it becomes a thing almost. It's an object. And when I try to put these on stretchers, they lost the fact of. They lost something because they started having depth on the sides. And what I find interesting about what I'm doing, at least I'm interested in it, is that the fact that they're really kind of like hanging pieces of cloth. But when you look at them, there's a space in there. And as someone wrote early on about some of my work, they said that the further you got away from it, the closer it seemed. And that seems to be true for most of my work. And I think by you can see back here the broadness of the stroke of what I'm doing, But this is just like, one little section of an 8-foot painting. There's some kind of something there that it happens that they start making my eyes buzz a little bit. I start thinking of things moving around a lot in the space. I don't know if it happens for anybody else. I don't know if it's just because my eyes are getting bad, but there's a sense of what Cezanne talked about is that he didn't paint the apples, he painted the distance between him and the apples. And I think what I'm trying to do, if I'm at all successful, is I'm trying to paint the distance between the viewer and the wall. I think if deep down, I like to think that somehow I'm questioning with the simplest of tools of chalk and charcoal and a little washy paint on a piece of raw canvas, I can somehow make people question where they're standing in space. Because I think most of us assume so much. And I think art is a way for us to stop and stop just looking, but start seeing. And for me, it's not so much seeing as it is feeling, I think. What does it feel like when you're walking around? And as you walk around these things, they tend to they warp a little bit, I think. I think I'm not the only one that said that. Of course, I'm pushing that, but that's other people have said that about him, that there's a dimension to him, and it has nothing to do with anything I'm trying to do. It just comes from 50 years of making marks on something, and 40 years. You know, my first museum show was 1974 when I was still in undergraduate school, and Miss Kilgore took us to New York in 1973, and that's the first time I'd ever been out of the woods. And she took us to studios and took us to the museums and all that. And you know, all those early things have just ingrained in me the importance and the possibility. Always the possibility, even at this late date in my age. It's not so much about this show. I'm starting to worry about what I'm going to do next. Should I ask for questions, or is everybody getting tired of hearing me talk?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, they can write them in the chat function. I think there's also like a raise your hand function that we can use too.
Maybe they all left already.
No, we're all still here.
I'm not, you know, it's so difficult. Usually, you know, you're talking to people and you're standing with the work and you go up there and point to it and say, this is that, and this is that. So this whole Zoom nation that we've been living in the last year has its own possibilities and limitations. That's to say the least.
I actually have a question, Michael. This is Kara. You said you go from like a smaller sketchbook to the larger paintings and drawings. Have you ever done like a 3-step process where you've gone from the smaller sketchbook to the larger drawing to a painting?
No, it's either going to be a painting or a drawing. I mean, what happens is I have materials. I had a whole big roll of paper. And so I just started cutting it up and putting it up and drawing. And when I ran out of paper, it was time to I had a bunch of canvas, so it's time to start filling that up. But I never repeat them too much. I might have early on repeated things, but anymore, I feel like that once it's got laid down somewhere, that's where it lives. And then I need to move on to the next, because there was so many of these sonograms that are just amazing. It just, every time, the more I dove into it, the more there was to see. And there were, and I think some of these have a really kind of a strange kind of tree or landscape, or there's and another thing too, just as I can put this in for another question if anything comes up, is I kind of think of this as figurative art. And it's not so much figurative art about looking at people on the outside, it's about how all we're figures on the inside. The whole idea that the commonness of all of us. And like I said in my art statement too, I think the fact that I picked a medical, you know, this virus is so silent and people walk around with it and they don't even know they have it, and they spread it all over the place and nobody knows where they got it, and it's been so deadly and it's so silent. And I think what I did is I found something where sound was used to look in to find things, that somehow somehow sound was gotten important to me, that somehow we could bounce radar off insides of us, and the sound would show that, you know, that's what ultrasounds are for, is kind of like a sonar that goes through you and bounces off, and it tells you, you know, most people are familiar with it for, you know, the development of a baby or something, or looking for things, but it's used for all kinds of stuff.
We do have a couple questions. So
All right.
Allison is asking, I find the depth and layering of this series very compelling. How do you sense when the layering is sufficient enough to reveal something rather than obscure it?
Well, that's, somebody tell me and I'll know. I just never know, you know. I get to a point, I think what I used to use oil paint a lot. I used oil paint forever. And then I had stage 4 cancer. And then I still used oil for a little bit. And then I felt like, you know, maybe this is not the best way. Oil paint's pretty rough on you. And so I went to acrylic, and there's a part of acrylic which is plastic. The polymer is the extender for it's a plastic polymer. And if you use it too thickly or use it too heavily, that the plasticness comes off. And I think that's why I use such a washy, thin paint, because I wanted to not get that plastic part. And if I get too far along, then all of a sudden it gets that weird plastic thing, and I don't like it. So it also, you get into the rhythm of the thing too. You know, it depends on, you know, a lot of this, since I was locked here in the house for the last year, you know, I come up here, I get to work every day, and you get into a rhythm, and you think, okay, I don't know if that's finished or not, but I don't know what to do to it. And a couple of them that did get messed up got overworked. I think it's more of a fear of overworking than it is underworking. But I wanted to have some kind of brilliance. I didn't want it to be too dull. And what happens is, well, on this raw canvas, when you paint it tends to, acrylic paint dries darker and deeper and duller. It's just the nature of the beast. So by layering, I had to really kind of get some kind of luminous coming out of it. You know, painting ought to be emitting light, not sucking it. So I'm busy trying to make sure that my painting's emitting and not sucking light, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I think that actually answered a couple of questions about that. Another kind of question off of your process would be, what is a typical time frame for working on a piece? And do you ever revisit a piece?
No, once I do one at a time, and once it's down off the wall, I roll it up and I start a new one. That's just because my studio isn't big enough to have multiples up. I can do 2 drawings at one time, but I complete one drawing and then I go over and I complete the next drawing. I don't go back and forth at them. I never go back on them because I could really screw it up then. And I think that the concept of the honesty and authenticity of the mark making is very important to me, you know, because, and if I did these smaller, I think I could control it a lot better. And I think since they're so big on this raw canvas, that I'm scrambling, just trying to save them all the time. And at a certain point, you realize that I really never know when they're done. But if I'm in a role, I could probably start one and work on it every day. I'm a big one about getting up here and working like I was working at a job. I show up at about 8:30, 9 o'clock if I can, and I work up till about 2. Then I have lunch. Then I come back, and there might be some little paint. I'll do all my emailing and politicking that I can, and school stuff I have to do. And then if there's paint still, I cover it all with tin foil, and then I pull it out. If there's paint still good, then I'll go and I'll use up the rest of the paint just to so I don't waste any paint. And then I'll come back the next day. And a lot of times I'll let it dry for a day because I do have other things, you know, school and other, you know, whatever everybody else has to do all the time. Go to the grocery store, you know, do the laundry, all that kind of thing. So I kind of do a day, let it dry, look at it, get scared, come back, work on it again. And then maybe at a certain point, I can do it 2 days in a row once it gets really built up. But when I was younger, I could sit there and work 8 hours straight. Now that I'm older, I think I can focus for about 2.5 hours at a time before I start losing, until I start just messing around and I can't focus anymore. So they're like short spurts of activity with a little drying.
So another question is about your drawings. So Barlow says it's the favorite part of his favorite part of your work. Tell about your expressive intent regarding the drawings.
Well, these big drawings, it's another thing too. You know, making a smaller drawing is one thing, but making these big drawings, I go through about 3 kneaded erasers. I start with a vine charcoal and I just kind of draw and I erase and I draw and I erase and I draw and I erase and I build up to this. So every mark in drawing, there's always place to hide. So every mark shows in a drawing, which is what I like about both these in the paintings. Most marks are all visible. And the drawing is, there's a density I think I was looking for. And at the end, I use some compressed charcoal, or I also have this weird kind of, I got a couple of weird kind of dark charcoaly chalk things that I might do at the end just to kind of get it a little richer. But it's mostly a buildup of marks and erasers of marks and building up more marks and basic, but it's all controlled by that sketch. You know, I'm trying to get that shape and trying to figure out how to get. And what happens is that at a certain point you can't erase anymore. It's just kind of, it's embedded in the paper. So when you look at the drawings in person, they're really worked. I use a Stonehenge printmaking paper. I think it's a 90 pound. I can buy it 50 inches by 10 yards. And you can also buy it in sheets of 22 by 30 or a couple other sizes. And I've been using Stonehenge almost 35 years or something, because I never had been able to put a hole in it. And it's got a nice surface to it. I used to use BFK, if anybody's an art person out there, and I thought it had too soft a surface for me. And then this Stonehenge seems to, I can soak it in washy paint, I can scrub on it, I can dig in it, I can do everything it is, and I can't put a hole in it. And I just find that works for me. Plus I can get a roll of it. That's pretty good. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think we have one more question, it looks like. So how did you decide what to include in the exhibition?
What fit? There was, you know, I had come down there before Eleanor Spears Ferris's retrospective that was kind of like this time last year, I think. It opened up in February and then that got closed early because of the pandemic. And before her show went up, I came up and I took, you know, cell phone pictures of the whole place. And so I had those and also a floor, you know, a floor plan of the space. And so I could look at those and think, well, okay, how many do I start counting walls and how many can I get in there? I did 11 of these. The fourth one, I never made it. I had to roll it up and throw it away. Number 1 and number 10, which is number 10 back here, just didn't fit in there because I thought the other ones were stronger works and they hung together better. The charcoal drawings, I didn't think they would really fit with these, but I needed something that would fit those walls because of the, you know, every space has its particulars, like where the vents are, or where the fire alarm is, or where the emergency lights are, or where a door is, or, you know, I mean, every place you go, there's something to dodge or to hamper where you want to put something. And so the drawings seemed to fit that big long wall. It fit those little small walls. And it also fit one corner back in there that the paintings wouldn't have fit. So, and so I brought them all, and then I took 2 of them back. But that's not too bad. I'd rather have too much than not enough, you know. But this is all from this year. So, you know, it's a year's worth of work, almost to the day.
I think we actually have a few more questions that have popped up here.
All righty, we got five more minutes. I can handle it.
Yeah, and anything that we don't get to today, I'll also keep the file. And Michael, I can email questions to you and we can post them afterwards. Because it looks like we have a bunch of questions for you that you might not get to.
All right. Well, we got 10 minutes. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make sure the answers.
Yeah. So someone is asking, have you looked at MRIs and CT scans for inspiration?
Well, I tell you what, I think deep down with this, with my, you know, I never have really did work about having cancer, but I think these last 2 shows have something to do with that. Some kind of, and I think this is the end of my medical work. I'm going to have to look for something else, you know, but like any artist, you just kind of follow a thread, you know. The lung paintings got me to these cats, these ultrasounds, and who knows where these are going to lead me to, you know. But I'm not so much interested in following too much more medical stuff. I think it's kind of like West Virginia. I've kind of made my statement about it so far.
I think we can answer one more. What do you think?
Yep.
Okay. So the next one, can you share your inspiration for the next drawings and paintings?
I haven't got the slightest idea. You know, you know, after today, I'm kind of through, you know, with the last month and a half or 2 has all been about sealing this work, wrapping it, getting it going, getting things done. You know, at this point, my job has been getting this show up in the ground, up in the air, and talking about it here tonight. I'll probably start thinking about drawing something, but who knows, because, you know, you can search and search, but until you find it. So I'll just, you know, it just all starts just scribbling around in sketchbooks, looking at things. So who knows what it could be.
What do you think, Paula? Should we? Yeah, so we're gonna save the rest of these questions.
Can we stop sharing?
Sure.
All right. There you go. There's.
Yeah, so we're gonna save the rest of everyone's questions and email them to Michael as well. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. The exhibition will be up until April 4th. So if you feel comfortable, you should come to the gallery in person. Our gallery hours are Monday through Friday, 1 to 6, Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Sundays from noon to 4. Please wear your mask, and we have a temperature station at the front desk as well. And if you would like to see online images, we're hoping to put up an image gallery for you to see the work online as well. So it's a beautiful show, and we hope you all can come by.